Welcome back to the Midnight Mind. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you're new, and please give this video a like, it means a lot. It's midnight, and tonight we enter the mind of Machiavelli. Nature has no morals, only balance, only hierarchy. Lions don't debate fairness before the hunt. Wolves don't mourn the deer. There is no guilt in the eyes of a predator, no compassion in the laws of nature. Yet humans, fragile and fearful, invented morality as a shelter, a fragile structure to protect the many from the few. It was not born from truth, but from necessity. When power is unequal, the weak gather together and call their fear virtue. Morality, then, is not a reflection of divine will, but a social invention, the weapon of the herd against the exceptional. The strong rely on instinct, the weak rely on rules. Every moral code throughout history has served the majority, never the individual. It praises humility, obedience, and restraint, the very qualities that keep potential chained. Morality, at its core, is political. It's not about what's right, it's about what keeps the crowd comfortable. Nietzsche understood this better than anyone. Morality is the herd instinct in the individual, he wrote, in The Gay Science. He meant that what we call conscience is often nothing more than the voice of the collective, echoing inside our own minds. When you feel guilt for defying convention, that guilt is not divine punishment, it's the herd whispering. Don't stand out, don't threaten the order, don't rise too high. It's crowd control disguised as conscience. Watch how morality shifts when the herd changes direction. What was once sinful becomes fashionable. What was once virtuous becomes dangerous. Yesterday's heretic is tomorrow's hero. This alone exposes morality for what it truly is, a mirror of mass opinion, not an eternal law. The moral man confuses consensus for truth. The free man understands that the crowd's approval is as fickle as the wind. History is filled with those who were destroyed for refusing to kneel before moral illusion. Socrates, crucified by democracy. Bruno, burned by faith. Nietzsche himself, silenced by the madness of seeing too clearly. The herd calls them immoral because they spoke from a higher law, one that threatened the collective dream. The crowd despises those who reveal its weakness, because it lives only through agreement. To question morality is to question the glue that binds the fearful together. And yet that illusion has power. The moral order is fragile, but it governs billions. It keeps wars justified, hierarchies stable, and obedience disguised as goodness. Every empire has written its commandments, painted its saints, and taught its children to fear disobedience. Morality doesn't protect truth, it protects control. It gives structure to the chaos of human instinct, turning raw power into guilt, and guilt into loyalty. But here's the paradox. Without morality, civilization collapses into barbarism. Without it, the strong devour the weak openly. So the illusion must remain, but only as an illusion. The wise understand that morality is a stage play, a necessary fiction. They act within it, not as believers but as directors. The moral man follows the script, the wise man writes it. One is ruled by symbols, the other uses them. If you look closely at society's heroes, its philanthropists, politicians and saints, you'll notice that their moral image matters more than their moral reality. The perception of virtue builds trust. Trust builds power, and power, once achieved, reshapes morality itself. The powerful don't follow rules, they redefine them. The crowd only realizes this when it's too late. By then, their faith has already been weaponized. The first lesson, then, is simple. Morality is not truth. It's a system of emotional control designed to regulate fear and preserve conformity. It tells you that equality is sacred, that humility is noble, that obedience is good. Not because these are cosmic truths, but because they keep the machinery running. The individual who sees through this structure is called dangerous, immoral, corrupt. but in truth, he is awake. To understand morality is to step outside of it, to see the strings that move human behavior. It means realizing that your guilt is not proof of wrongdoing, but evidence of conditioning. It means recognizing that the moral systems you inherited were built to make you predictable, not powerful. The illusion of morality is not meant to make you better, it's meant to make you manageable. So when someone tells you to be good, ask yourself, good for whom? Because morality always serves an interest. It's never neutral. It bends towards the comfort of the many and the preservation of power. The lion that refuses to hunt because it feels guilty will starve. The man who refuses to act because he fears judgment will vanish. In both cases, nature will not mourn. To rise above the illusion of morality is not to become cruel, it's to become conscious. It's to recognize that moral codes are tools, not truths. They shape societies, but they shouldn't shape your soul. The illusion only enslaves those who believe it's real. Once you see that morality is performance, you gain the freedom to act with intelligence, not obedience. And yet, that realization is dangerous, because the moment you stop believing in morality, the ground beneath you shifts. You lose the comfort of certainty, the warmth of belonging, the simplicity of right and wrong. You step into a colder, truer world, one where balance, hierarchy, and will to power replace the fairy tales of virtue. Few can survive that clarity. Fewer still can use it without falling into corruption. That's the beginning of power, and the first step toward the mask of virtue. Once you understand that morality is an illusion, you begin to see how power survives inside it. Every ruler, every leader, every institution that endures has mastered one essential skill: the art of appearing good. Genuine virtue is rare, fragile, and often self-destructive. But the appearance of virtue, that is the true currency of power. Those who seem moral gain the trust of the crowd, and trust is the softest form of control ever invented. Machiavelli revealed this centuries ago. In The Prince, he wrote, "It is unnecessary for a prince to have all the good qualities, but it is very necessary to appear to have them." This was not cynicism, it was realism. He understood that the people do not see into hearts, they see into performances. The crowd doesn't measure truth, it measures comfort. They want leaders who reflect their ideals, not their realities. The mask of virtue, therefore, is not hypocrisy, it's strategy. To appear moral is to speak the language of safety. The crowd fears what it cannot predict, and morality provides predictability. When you seem good, people trust your intentions even when your actions serve yourself. When you seem kind, they forgive your cruelty so long as you deliver what they crave, the illusion of order. The wise understand this. They cultivate symbols, tone, posture, the subtle theatre of moral authority. They don't need to be good, they only need to seem safe. The moral man, by contrast, is sincere. He means what he says. He plays no games. And that sincerity is exactly what destroys him. The world rewards the illusion of goodness, not its practice. The sincere man sacrifices his interests for ideals. He exposes his truth to those who will use it against him. He becomes transparent in a world that worships mirrors. And like all transparent things, he is eventually shattered. This is why the most powerful figures in history understood morality as theatre. Caesar wept before the Senate as he claimed he never sought the crown. Kings performed acts of mercy in public and cruelty in private. Today, politicians apologise on camera while consolidating control behind closed doors. The performance is ancient, only the stage has changed. The costume remains the same: compassion, humility, justice. Symbols that make masses feel righteous while they are quietly ruled. The modern world has only refined this illusion. Virtue has become marketing. Corporations adopt moral slogans. Governments speak in the language of equality. Influencers sell ethics with the same breath they sell vanity. The mask has replaced the man entirely. Appearances now define identity. To seem moral online is to gain currency. To question morality is to invite exile. The system doesn't need truth, it needs compliance, dressed as goodness. This is the tragedy of the moral man. He believes that virtue is its own reward, that honesty guarantees respect. But in the arena of power, honesty is ammunition. It reveals your weakness. The man who insists on being authentic in a corrupt world becomes a martyr to his own purity. He's admired after his fall, but never before it. The wise man learns to hide his truth beneath symbols the crowd can understand. The performance protects him while he builds the freedom to act without fear. To appear moral, then, is not to lie. It is to communicate in the language of survival. The wise don't reject morality, they repurpose it. They use it as camouflage, as diplomacy, as art. They understand that the crowd needs to believe in goodness, even if it's false. They feed that belief while remaining untouched by it. Power demands illusion because truth terrifies. The man who speaks truth without strategy is devoured by the very people he tries to free. Consider the moral reformer who exposes corruption. The crowd praises him at first, then turns on him the moment his truth threatens their comfort. They want justice, but not the discomfort it brings. They worship virtue, but only when it costs them nothing. This is the paradox of the herd. It demands morality, yet punishes those who truly live by it. It wants the appearance of conscience without the burden of consequence. And so the appearance becomes reality. The mask of virtue, when mastered, becomes a weapon. It can open doors that honesty could never touch. It can silence enemies, disarm critics, and win allies who would otherwise resist you. The crowd is moved by emotion, not evidence. They follow symbols, not reason. If you can craft the right image, a saint's words, a saviour's tone, you can lead them anywhere. This is not deceit, it is understanding human nature. The world does not run on truth, it runs on narrative. But there is a danger in this mask. Once you wear it long enough, you risk believing it yourself. You begin to mistake appearance for essence, approval for power. The same illusion you use to rule others begins to rule you. Nietzsche warned of this when he wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." He meant that every weapon of deceit carries a cost. If you forget that your virtue is performance, you become the performance, hollow, dependent on applause. That's why the wise man must remain aware. He must never confuse the costume with the soul. He uses morality as a language, but never lets it define his thoughts. He plays the role of virtue until the stage itself no longer matters. The appearance of goodness is a shield in a world that punishes truth. But once you no longer fear punishment, once you stand beyond the crowd's approval, you can remove the mask entirely. That's where freedom begins. Until then, you must play the part. You must learn the script that the world understands. Pretend to be moral, and you will be trusted. Appear virtuous, and you will be followed. Only from that position of strength can you begin to question what good actually means. The wise man smiles in public and acts in private. He understands that purity without power is martyrdom, and that martyrdom feeds the very system it tries to destroy. To master the mask of virtue is not to betray your soul, it's to protect it from a world that punishes the unmasked. Pretend to be moral until you no longer need to. Use appearances as tools, not as chains. The moral man obeys appearances, the wise man designs them. And in that difference lies the border between obedience and dominion, between being ruled and ruling yourself. You were taught that your conscience is sacred, that it's the divine voice within you. But what if that voice isn't divine at all? What if it's the echo of the herd whispering inside your skull, telling you to behave so you won't be cast out? What if your morality, your guilt, your hesitation, your fear of disapproval is not a sign of goodness, but a mechanism of control? This is the secret most never dare to face. Your conscience may not be yours. Nietzsche called it slave morality, the morality of the weak, designed to shackle the strong. It glorifies humility, patience, obedience, and forgiveness. Not because these traits are noble, but because they keep potential subdued. The herd cannot survive if individuals act with pure will. It must convince them that their instincts are sinful, their ambition dangerous, their anger evil. And so morality was born, a psychological chain forged in the language of virtue. Guilt became the shepherd's whip. When you feel guilty for wanting power, that guilt protects the collective, not your soul. It keeps you small enough to be governed. The man who feels guilty for speaking his truth remains silent. The man who feels guilty for desiring greatness apologizes for his strength. The herd has found a way to control the wolf from within the wolf's own mind. No walls, no prisons, only the internalized voice of should. This is why Nietzsche said, morality is the herd instinct in the individual. The conscience isn't a moral compass, it's a broadcast. It tells you what to think, how to feel, when to kneel. It rewards you with belonging when you obey, and punishes you with shame when you don't. It doesn't guide you to truth, it guides you to conformity. And the more moral you become by society's standards, the more predictable you are. The herd loves predictability. It calls it goodness. Every empire depends on this obedience of conscience. Religion perfected it. Politics inherited it. Media amplifies it. The moral slogans change, but the structure remains. The crowd is told who to love, who to hate, what to fear, and they call it ethics. Few ever question the source of their values. Fewer still realize that their virtue was installed long before they could choose it. They were born into moral software designed to maintain the existing hierarchy. And yet, to see through this illusion is dangerous. Once you question morality, you no longer have a map. You begin to see how every good action hides a strategy, how every evil act may hold necessity. You step into the abyss, a space where there are no commandments, no promises, no certainty. This is the terrifying freedom of self-awareness. Nietzsche warned, without an internal law, power decays into corruption. Freedom without discipline becomes chaos. The man who escapes morality must build his own code, or he will be consumed by his instincts. That's why most prefer the comfort of the herd. They would rather obey a false morality than face the abyss of self-creation. The crowd calls it goodness. Nietzsche called it cowardice. To live without inherited rules requires strength, not cruelty, but sovereignty. The wise man understands this balance. He knows that morality, as society defines it, is a performance. But conscience, when purified of fear, can become something real. Not an echo of the herd, but a compass of authenticity, real authenticity. When you act not from guilt or reward, but from deliberate will, when your choices arise from the inner clarity, not outer approval, that is the birth of true morality. It is no longer imposed, it's created, it becomes yours. To reach that level, however, you must first play the game. Until you can stand outside the herd, you must blend in with it. Until you have the power, you must appear harmless. This is not hypocrisy, it is intelligence. Pretend to be moral until you are free enough not to pretend. Play the part until you no longer need the stage. Only when your survival no longer depends on the herd's approval can you discard its mask and live by your own law. This is the true meaning of Machiavelli's wisdom. When he said it is very necessary to appear to have good qualities, he wasn't celebrating deceit, he was describing camouflage. Appear virtuous so that you can move undetected. Build trust so that you can act with freedom. Use morality as a cloak until you no longer fear the cold. The moral man becomes enslaved to appearances. The wise man uses appearances to buy time. Power grows in silence and shadows before it can stand in the light. When you finally stand beyond the herd, morality transforms. It stops being a script and becomes expression. You act not because you're told to, but because your nature demands it. You no longer seek permission to exist. You no longer ask what's right according to others. You decide what is right according to truth. And truth, unlike morality, is never gentle. It strips away illusion until all that remains is will. This transformation is rare. Most who glimpse it retreat back into comfort. They convince themselves that obedience is peace, that humility is virtue, that silence is safety. They prefer the warm chains of moral approval to the solitude of power. But those who endure the solitude discover something extraordinary, that the universe doesn't punish them for breaking moral rules. It simply watches. There is no divine scoreboard, no cosmic jury, only cause, effect, and consequence. Power rewards awareness, not guilt. To live beyond the herd is not to reject compassion or empathy, it is to choose them freely. When kindness is no longer commanded, it becomes genuine. When honesty is no longer obligatory, it becomes powerful. The man who acts from inner law can be merciful without being weak, ruthless without being cruel, detached without being cold. He has integrated the predator and the saint, the shadow and the light, into one whole being. This is the birth of authentic morality. Not obedience, but self-mastery. And yet this journey isn't for everyone. It demands solitude, self-integration, and an unflinching will to truth. It demands that you look at your guilt and ask whose voice it belongs to, that you trace your beliefs to their origin and see who benefits from them, that you recognize how often you perform virtue for applause instead of conviction. To awaken from moral illusion is not to become evil, it is to become awake. In the end, there are only two kinds of people: those who serve morality and those who use it, those who worship virtue as an idol and those who wear it as armor, those who cling to approval and those who outgrow the need for it. The world will always praise the moral man while secretly following the cunning one. It has always been that way, and until you understand that, you'll keep losing to those who pretend better than you believe. So pretend until you can choose. Play moral until you can act free. The mask is not the enemy, it's a bridge. Cross it consciously and you'll discover the one law that matters, your own. Because beyond morality lies authenticity, and beyond authenticity lies power. Power not over others, but over yourself, the only kingdom that cannot be taken away. Appear moral, and you will win the crowd. Be moral, and you will die with their approval, but not their power. If you have any thoughts on today's episode, I'd love to hear them. Leave me a message in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button for me, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.